I was inspired by leaders, Machiavelli, who were only killed, not just who died, who were only killed. Because
as the world, what should we stop? What should we start? What should we continue because we're doing right?
Mama Nomzamo, Madikizela, right? Mandela. In fact, I'm surprised they didn't kill her. We haven't studied leadership enough. Not enough books have been written on leadership. We are almost at the brink of a civil war. I'm talking in South Africa alone. I don't even want to go to other places where unemployment is higher than us. You don't succeed or fail. No, we've been sold that lie. That is a lie, a blatant one. You don't win or fail, Bashe. You fail along the way towards success. That there is a reason why the act of going to get fish from the river is called fishing. It's not called catching. I mean, think about that for a while. It's not called catching. All you need is you want to learn how to sell. Stick with people who sell. The greatest disappointment that God has on you is your last. The Medici family, who obviously were the people who, fine-tuned the idea of rulership, the idea of royal families, and how each generation becomes a dynasty to the next and a dynasty to the next, and on it goes, So I would say just check out that movie.
The Medici,
yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a move to check it out. We love these movies. On our top list right now, because we do talk about them, we reflect on them. We watched the Social Network. I don't know.
Yes,
it's a documentary like kind
correct.
of thing, and the Social Dilemma.
I haven't seen that one, right?
Yeah, it's how Mark Zuckerberg came to build Facebook and the hells that he had. Think and Grow Rich,
right?
The Legacy, New Legacy.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a movie around that.
Wow.
And
Spotify.
Yeah,
there's a movie about Spotify.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to check that out.
It's a 4-part series.
And of course, The Matrix is
right.
The Matrix.
Ray Kroc.
The founder.
The founder.
So the founders, no.
He's the founder, right?
The founder.
Ray Kroc.
About McDonald's.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Ray Kroc, yeah. Oh, okay.
There's a movie about how he acquired McDonald's.
So we love these movies. Every time a guest come here, we gather them,
I see.
Yeah. Everybody, welcome to the new episode. Yes. Thank you so much for subscribing, and thank you so much for being part of this community. Remember, you can become a member and pay as much as you want just to, fuel us, keep the lights on. And of course, Machiavelli, today we have a very phenomenal guest. I know I always say that, but today we have a seriously extraordinary Bhuti Mbusi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Bashe. Call me Mbusi. Just the name is fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. My aim in life is just to be known by my name, Mbusi. The same name, it was somebody else's name, by the way. I appreciate, I'm a son of Gqabaza. I come from the Gqabaza family. The Gqabazas are the Makanyas. They came from the Kumedes, so Sabenguni. But the surname Gqabaza is the actual surname. I'm a son of Gqabaza, but because of the work I do, I also create and curate my own identity in Zikalo, which simply means the beginnings.
Yeah.
The beginnings, yes. And hence my progeny will be called Zikalo, or is called Zikalo, but I'm a son of Gqabaza.
No, amazing. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence.
Thank you.
I said, we researching you was a real task.
Wow.
Very educational before the interview itself. And as you start right there, that I should just call you Mbusi.
Yeah.
A part of my research, I came across your one of the videos. I think you were talking to a group of people there, and you're like, titles don't mean anything, especially in the space of leadership. Take me through that, because Tina was sikhuliswa to hayi ngibize baba, ngibize bhuti, ngibize tata. So in your case, you have a different view that it's just a title.
Yes, leadership is not a title that you possess, but actually the purpose for which you were created and brought to planet Earth. So how I would define a leader, it is a person, right? Not a title, right? It is a person, and preferably without a title, but a person with a purpose. Because you can measure purpose. You can measure the delivery of a purpose. But you cannot measure a title, because a title is simply a way of making simpler what a person does. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this.
Please, you can continue the podcast.
All right. So when a person hides behind a title, they usually have not done anything worthwhile, worth mentioning, and nothing has been of impact in their journey of leadership or management or being in charge. So when a person insists on a title, then you must know that actually this person, it's the title that they insist on that they have, and they can hide behind it. And in the context of organizations, in the context of corporates, in the context of sectors of business out there, these are people who usually are gatekeepers. They did not qualify to even be in that position in the first place. They came in because they knew somebody inside. I know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody.
Yeah.
All right? They were given a chance. That's not wrong in most cases. That's not wrong. It's not nepotism, right? And that's, by the way, one of the things. I define nepotism differently. Nepotism is not when I hire my son in my company, right? That's not nepotism. For me, nepotism is when I hire my son that I should not hire because he does not have the requisite skills, the requisite values, the requisite knowledge, the requisite qualification to be in that position.
Yeah.
So it's not who you hire. It's what they have that you hire. What do they have the temperament for the position? So when a leader has a title or is entitled, they therefore do not see the need to learn every day and to begin every day. I'm a beginner. I begin even now. All right? I'm a searcher. I search for new things. I am I'm a nomad. I try new things. I'm not married to the past. In fact, one of the great leaders that I learn from says that the greatest disappointment that God has on you is your last achievement.
Yeah.
Right? So when you have a title, therefore, you become a problem in the organization, in the community, in your country, because you're not doing what needs to be done, but you are simply hiding behind the title.
Why was the title created then? Why did they give us like DR, be a doctor, prof, and all that? Why didn't we just go blatantly with our names and whatever purpose we're serving after?
The human psyche, the human psychology is designed for recognition, right? So when you say to me, Dad, I'm like, okay, it feels good.
Yeah.
It's part of the human story and part of the human psychology. I want to be called Dad. I want to be called brother, like my younger brother Kanya. He calls me Mfowethu. I call him Mnewethu. You're right? So I want to be called that. Budi, my sisters, Nomisa Zina, Nonhlanhla, all of them, they call me Budi. in our context as especially South Africans, But when I use ukuba ubhuti, being called ubhuti in a wrong way, that's when it becomes a title. So people will recognize you as CEO, as founder of Asvai. They will recognize that's good. But when that recognition, you, the individual, turns it around into a non-productive, non-excellence, and, then it becomes a problem. So you are a doctor by PhD. You can be a doctor by or being honorary doctorate. You can be any other. I'm called a disruptor, for example, in my circles by my clients, because I come into an organization and one of the things I do to solve leadership problems is I disrupt the whole thing. So that those who want to leave can leave, by the way. We encourage them, no, go look for work elsewhere, because this is what we're trying to do. And if you're not going to be part of this, then unfortunately we have to ask you to leave. That's like really.
We are firing people at their own institutions.
I want to give people the idea of the type of guest we have today. Yeah, we're on another level. And while I'm giving them that, please pour your sugar on that, because I'm just gonna go through your bio, right? So that you also don't get surprised by yourself. Okay, so today the guest we have is Umbusi, leadership speaker, a distinguished global thought leader, keynote speaker, executive consultant, prolific author, transformational coach, EQ mentor, master facilitator, master teacher, systems thinker. I'm very interested in this one. Yeah, you being a systems thinker. And a modern philosopher renowned for his expertise in transformational leadership. His seminal work, The Art and Science of Leadership book, which is the one that's just placed there on the table, espouses the belief that leadership is a fusion of a forward-thinking mindset, unwavering faith in innate abilities, and steadfast commitment to unyielding values. So there's more. I can go on. But I think this is the integral part of this biography. Of course, you've done a lot of work with corporate, leadership bodies, different leadership bodies, and coaching individual. We can go on that. On this conversation, I'm hoping we conduct some leadership masterclass.
Sure.
Like I said, just checking on the work that you are doing, I was so fascinated. I love how you look at leadership, because when we normally attend the way of leadership, we would expect group of people, but you look at it from an individual point of view, and I found that quite interesting. So let me give you the structure of this conversation, and for you who's watching right there, I want us to have a funnel-like conversation on leadership. Let's start on the global scale. Let's discuss leadership concept on that level, and let's come to our country, our own country, South Africa, and let's come to families and businesses, let's check at the leadership there, and let's end up with the individual level of leadership. And in us talking about that, I want us to conduct this conversation from a feedback perspective or point of view. There's a study that they do in Harvard Business School. They call this, I'm big on feedbacks, right? This system of feedback, SSC, stop, what to stop, what to start, what to continue, right? Yes. Let's look at this conversation from those three angles.
Right.
As the world, what should we stop? What should we start? What should we continue because we're doing right, Right. And for others that maybe might have sought in the UK, it's KQS. What to keep, what to quit, what to start. So we're going to have a conversation amongst those three things on the leadership level. And my first question is right there. What do you think as the world we are doing right in this day and time? Would that we should continue with?
Constitutionalism, right? I think the world is at a level which is far from barbarism, far from being backward, killing each other and things like that. We are much more refined as the world today than our ancestors were, let's say, 5,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, even 1,000 years ago. However, having said that, there are pockets, I'm not going to go into it, but there are pockets of world politics and world leadership, right, that are causing me consternation. Because when I look at what those pockets are doing worldwide, they are almost taking us back to Stone Age in that archaic mindset of killing people willy-nilly. Because they are less than us, we can just wipe them off. You know, I'm worried about that. It causes me sleepless nights, almost literally, right? But we are on the right track, back to your question, when it comes to, for me, when it comes to constitutionalism, to a great extent. When these bad things happen at a geopolitical level, at a global level, right? You hear questions like, what is international law saying about this?
Yeah.
You know, perhaps let's go report this at the Court of Justice, the International Court of Justice. I'm forgetting the other court, what it's called.
ICC.
The
ICJ and
ICJ and ICC.
ICC.
Correct.
Yes.
Thanks, Machiavelli. Yeah. You know, Regan Bondman says I'm only human. I can forget it. So, but otherwise, we have become a people, especially in the last 50 years, right, globally, who believe and are more inclined towards constitutionalism. Almost every country out there, big and small, has a constitution of some sort. Of course, some constitutions are less than others. Constitutions out there are not equal. And ours in South Africa, of course, is touted as one of the best, right? There's a debate on that as well. But I think if we were to continue in our current trajectory, Bahle, worldwide, we need to stick to constitutionalism and make sure that we all have one document, which is sort of like a global vision of what we believe in as a country, where we're going as a region, where we're going as a continent, and where we're going as the world. And I think that document for now is the Magna Carta, the Constitution, basically. Yeah.
So when you are there, I really understand you exactly when you're speaking about the Constitution. Do you think there's something that we can be looking forward to outside power and outside like showing who's the king on this table? What would be that in suggestion? Maybe as the world, we, like you say, can we look forward to this thing?
Right. I recently released a book called The Power of Stepping into the Unknown, which is basically a masterclass on the power of curiosity, both at individual level and at a corporate level. I would imagine at a country level, at a regional level, also at a world level. The one thing we can look forward to is curiosity. Being curious as humanity, to say we've achieved so much. What more can we do? Right? I saw one joke on social media that says, as long as we cannot download food, I know there's a lot of work to do still, And another one said that the way women love money, and this is not a slight on women, it was just a joke that I saw on social media. He says the way some women love money, they run short of actually cooking it and eating it these days, But again, this is not a slight on women. I don't think women are like that. Of course, a joke about some women, just to qualify that. Now, I think as the world, we have to believe that there's so much more from what has been done yet as humanity. we still have a lot of work to do. And we must look on with bated breath, right? We must look on with almost anxiety at what the world or the humanity is capable of. Because otherwise, if we don't do that, we might fall into the trap of negativity at a global level. We don't want that. So there's a lot of good that's been untapped yet in humanity. I mean, China for me, is just one example where you have a dictatorship in terms of if we categorize and say what is China as a leadership style, that is progressive. That is doing things and it's surprising us. It's giving us a run for our money. And just 20 years ago, we called it Hong Kong.
Yeah.
We said they are copying everything.
Blamed them of dumping.
Right. You know what I'm saying? And that kind of curiosity says to me, South Africa, we're shooting this in South Africa right now. South Africa can be a global player at some tangent, of technology and innovation.
Yeah.
So I think we can look forward to that.
Yeah. And do you have something, Machiavelli?
Yeah, of course, man.
Of course, did you?
Of course.
I love this Machiavelli.
Please.
One of those leaders here in Africa, I always like to contextualize these things at an African context as well. Mohamed Morsi of Libya.
Yes.
We all know and seen what happened after his death.
Departure.
After his departure.
Right.
As a great person. Yeah. Before, during his tenure, and now. Even though the media will not display that, but his leadership style then, there are some people who are now missing him and saying, things were much better during his term.
Machiavelli, we need to be so intentional about our leadership as a discipline, right? Because I think leadership is a sector on its own, right?
Yeah.
It's a sector. It's such an agency in our human experience, in our human story, that we haven't studied leadership enough. Not enough books have been written on leadership, let alone master classes like this one, right? Take an example of, from what you've just said. You've just reminded me of Ibrahim Traore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I always imagine, and I'm sending a request out there, right? I would love to do a master's, just studying his style of leadership. In an African context, in a regional context, of course, taking factors that are global. But he's onto something. And I think I'm not satisfied, personally, with the snippets of videos that are online. I would like to come close and study the man and actually document, right, in a full-blown study. And actually document his style of leadership, his thoughts, and even the question you asked, Bahle, about what can we look forward to.
Yeah.
I would love to have insight into what he sees into the future.
Yeah.
So exactly, we mustn't miss leaders when they are gone. Let's study them, let's learn from them, and document their lives and their thoughts and their visions while they're still alive.
Talking about leadership and leaders. Umbusi. Yeah, it's all in the name. For those Nguni speaking people, once someone introduces themselves as Umbusi,
yes,
you are about to be led.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you please tell us about your names? Who gave you this name?
Hey, Machiavelli, he asked difficult questions, but they're interesting. So I was born in Nsekelelo. Right? My mother named me, apparently. And then I was born out of wedlock. So there's a context to my naming. So my mother named me Nsigelelo, which means blessing in Xhosa, and born this is Zulu as well.
Yes.
Nsigelelo. So I'm a blessing. Right. Then because my father Amachita, they have one or two girlfriends right there. It's like
yeah.
So I have a sister as well from another mother, And then there was a bit of a fight there when we were born.
Same age group.
Right. You see? And then my grandmother from my maternal side named me Tulani, saying, Umsindo.
Peace. Yeah.
Tulani, let there be peace. You know, not in the context of shut up, no, but in the context of peace.
Yeah.
Right. So, but growing up, my father always mentioned that this is what he wanted me to be. He would define it, but he would never say it in a name format. But all that he wanted me to be, right, is contextualized in the name Umbusi. All right. So, and that's how the name came. All right. So, Umbusi. So it's not Umbusi as in ruler or leader, but Umbusi, the ruler or the king or whatever.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, there's a difference. That you makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like even people when they try to interpret my name. CP
Right.
Not CP
Not P-way.
or Simp.
No.
CP.
Right.
I hear you. And what our audience is also missing there is that you have a royal blood.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. There's royal blood coursing through my veins. My father is born of a great-granddaughter, Umazondi, or great-granddaughter of King Bambata, Kamanwenza Zondi. So, you know, I'm born from my paternal side of my father, maternal side of my father, there's royal blood. So it's coursing through my veins as we speak. And of course, we know a little bit about King Bambata, Kamanwenza, who fought against the domination of the whites, especially when they introduced the poll tax, Ukanda Bond. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. So eventually he defied them and he ran away and he hid himself with his troops, his Amabutu, in the forest at Nkandla. All right. And that is where he was eventually caught and then, you know, brought to chains, so to speak. So I come from that activist kind of mindset. I've got activist blood inside me. And I'm very proud of that association.
Some leaders are born, some are made. I guess you are the born one, right?
Yeah.
Look, I want us to stretch that conversation about your lineage, right? But we're gonna come back when we now get on a national level of this discussion. Who inspired you in terms of leadership when you look at the global landscape, or maybe globally? What are which leaders inspired you, and you look at them, you're like, that was the treasure that the world lost? And tell me about those type of leaders.
I was inspired by leaders, Machiavelli, who were only killed, not just who died, who were only killed. Because for a leader to be killed for his cause, for his beliefs, and for his convictions, that for me is the ultimate leadership, true leadership, right? So in one conference, I was asked a question, can you give us at least 10 of the current leaders who are alive today who inspire you? I said, I have none. Because all true leaders are dead. And that includes me, by the way. That includes me, by the way.
What about Babu Malala?
It's a trick question, but I still maintain all true leaders are dead, and they were killed. Then they didn't die of age or sickness. No, they were killed.
Poisoned or killed.
Poisoned, killed, assassinated.
Yeah.
Those are true leaders.
Let's give some names. Who are we talking about here? Maybe
we can.
Thomas Sankara.
Wait.
We can go across the spectrum. I mean, we can mention the prophets of old, right? We can mention the royals, you know, King Shaka, Umlilwana, Uskiti, Kasenzanga Khona, Kajama, Kandaba, you know. We can go to King Yinza of the Amakos. You know, we can go to the king of I'm forgetting the name of Abasutu. King Mushweshwe. Okay, King Mushweshwe was not killed.
Not killed.
But we can go to other kings who were killed. I'm trying to encompass all of them. We can go to religious leaders. We can go to people like Jesus.
Yeah.
A leader of the Jews, all right, who was killed for his convictions. And when he died, they put a title, a plaque in Latin, Greek, and Hebrew, which says, "This is the King of the Jews." You know? So the very thing they killed him for, they put it up there and acknowledged that actually this is the King of the Jews. When he was born, King Herod at the time, when he heard that a king of the Jews had been born, he sent out a killing spree of all babies under the age of 2 back then. Every baby boy at that time was killed who was 2 years and younger, right? So people will kill you for what you were born for, right? Mm-hmm. And I usually define it like this. For a leader to be killed for his conviction, his or her convictions, right? They must be at a level where they acknowledge and embrace and live out what I define as God's recognition of a problem that would exist in your lifetime, Machiavelli. And that's the reason why you were born. You were not born to have a job. A job is part of human experience. You must have a job. You were not born for, this or that. No, those are part of human experience. You must go to work and earn money for your family and stuff. But the real reason you were born is that the Creator, whomever you name him to be, or you understand him to be, or her, whatever the case is, the Creator saw that in your lifetime, there would be a problem that only you, out of 8 billion people in the world today, alive today, right?
Yeah.
Only you would be able to solve that problem.
Yeah. By the way, guys, if you're watching this, I'm telling you, this podcast changed us before it changed you.
Yes. I'm having goosebumps as it speaks now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there are leaders that even in the music business, they were killed because of their beliefs. The ideas, the values they espoused about the world and humanity. They were shot, they were, stabbed, you name it. So it's not just leaders in the political space or in the leadership space, in the corporate space. No. I mean, most recently in our case, I'm talking Madlanga Commission, I'm talking Zondo Commission, right? Type of stuff. Recently in our case, we have names like the late Babita Deokaran, who saw payments in millions being paid over a short space of time. And the CFO of the hospital said, hang on, what's going on here? The minute she asked that question, somebody waited for her in her home, in front of her children, and emptied a machine gun on her. And that's how we lost it. Right? So every time I speak Machiavelli, I am so aware that because of my message, I almost said menace, because of my message, which is a menace, I would imagine, right? I am aware that there might be a bullet out there with my name on it.
Hey, hi. Hopefully they don't catch you in this room.
So true leaders, therefore, Bashe, are dead before they are killed.
And most of them, they don't even reach their 40s.
Right.
They die in their 33.
Before they are killed.
What do you think about the leadership mindset of Umama Winnie? Did you watch the late release documentary?
I did.
What do you think of her leadership style?
Her leadership style was fit for purpose. You'll notice that I didn't say purpose, I said purpose. Right? It was fit for purpose because you don't want a Ramaphosa style of leadership during a time of war. What am I saying? I'm saying Mama Nomzamo, Madikizela, right? Mandela. By marriage, right? She's a Mandela by marriage. By birth, uMamsuthu.
Yes.
uMamsuthu. Madikizela. Right. She stood as a towering figure, right, against an oppressive and violent system. I recently went to the house in Brantford where she was held under house arrest, just to see. So this is where she stayed, right? For quite some time. This is where she stayed, alone. This is where she stayed. So she did what needed to be done by a leader looking at the time in which she lived, which was a brutal time. In fact, I'm surprised they didn't kill her.
As well, I was
physically.
Yeah.
I mean physically. I was very surprised.
I think they killed her spirit during that time, because we read the letters that she wrote to Robben Island, or wherever Madiba was incarcerated at, they would get distorted, which is the information that I think was never tapped into during the commission, the Truth and Reconciliation TRC, Truth and Reconciliation Commission. There's a lot of things that were not touched on. It was a wash hawk, that thing, because intelligence was never touched at all. The role that was played by business was never touched. So they did kill her spirit by altering the letters and miscommunicating with Utata.
And in terms of values, Bahle and Machiavelli, I need to say this very quickly. In terms of values, as a country, South Africa, and as the continents out there and the world out there, we don't really value value. We do not value. We don't hold the value of true leadership. Why am I saying that? Mama Winnie should have been one of the guest lecturers in our universities and teaching guerrilla leadership. What does it mean to lead at the edge of chaos? Right? What does it mean to be a leader and hold the sharp side of the blade with your bare hands? Even if the blood drips, but you hold it because you don't want it to come to you. You also don't want it to come to your children. Right? Yeah. So we don't value leadership. One of the things that Hitler instituted in all his evil, right? As an evil leader.
Yeah.
But one of the good things he instituted was that every former president, they call them chancellors, in Germany. Every former chancellor, which is a president.
Yes.
By law is required to teach political science in a university as part of human community service, country service, to service to their countrymen. Of course, we know he started VW. He was the founder of the company VW, back in the day. But I won't go into that. But I'm saying that we don't value leadership because people like Mama Winnie should have been the people teaching political leadership, right? Political science in our universities, not just lecturers. I'm not taking anything away from lecturers. I'm saying we should be intentional about these things. We have living gems right now. They're not dead yet, but they are not teaching leadership.
Yeah.
They're not teaching political science in our universities.
Yeah. Hey, Baba, you said you are a disruptor. What are you disrupting currently? Or where are you disrupting?
Right. Machiavelli, I like your questions. Can this guy wait with these questions? No, joking.
Thank you for the compliment, by the way.
Machiavelli, I'm disrupting the thinking in our youth that there's unemployment and therefore there's unemployment and therefore we're unemployed. Right? I'm saying yes, there is unemployment and it is serious. It is very serious. In fact, we are almost at the brink of a civil war. I'm talking in South Africa alone. I don't even want to go to other places where unemployment is higher than us. Right? We're at the brink of a civil war. Because the haves, sorry, let me start with the have-nots. The have-nots will not hold for long. A 35-year-old today, as I'm speaking now, there are 35-year-olds. Ever since the dawn of democracy, they've never been employed. And they are at the risk of long-term unemployment. They are what we call in the space of work readiness, which I specialize in as well. They are what we call discouraged work seekers. They've stopped looking for work. They've stopped. And the situation is exacerbated by the fact that they see on social media the youth graduating every February, March, every September, November, December. They are graduating, and they are graduating into unemployment. A person who's writing exams right now is back from school holidays, is back at the res now as we speak. They are studying, yes, they are continuing with their study, and they should continue with their study. We don't want people who skip education for no reason, unless they're going to become a Mark Zuckerberg or
which we need them, but
you know. Yeah. So, but the person who's studying right now, Machiavelli, knows very well that they are going toward. They are not headed towards employment.
They are.
In fact, they are headed towards internship after internship after internship, and then when they no longer qualify, then it all stops. So I'm trying to paint a picture, Bahle, that says I am not flippant about unemployment, but I'm also saying in an equal vein, I'm saying there are habits young people need to start inculcating in a serious way. And while they inculcate these habits, government needs to start paying a stipend, not a salary, not a wage, a stipend to young people or anyone who's unemployed but is seeking work, right? Whilst they develop these habits, which can enable them to at least make about 200 to 300 rand every day.
Let's mention 5. Even if we don't go in detail, we're gonna cover them on the part 2.
Right.
Let's because I want us to go back to leadership. Right. What's habit number 1?
Habit number 1 is getting rid of fear of failure.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it takes us to his other book, his latest release. But either way, you can just summarize it so that the viewers and the subscribers there, as well, can go and get this book.
Yeah.
It becomes a habit when you adopt failure as a friend. It becomes a habit.
Is that a good habit?
It's a great habit. It's not even a good habit. It's a great habit. Because it says you understand failure for what it really is, which is a friend along the journey to success. So you don't succeed or fail. No, we've been sold that lie. That is a lie, a blatant one. You don't win or fail, Bahle. You fail along the way towards success. It is part of success. Because people who don't fail along the way to success, when they get to success, it goes to their heads, it messes up with their brain. When their wallet is full of money, that song is so packed with the right message. Because this is what happens when young people, or let me not say young people, when people generally succeed without stretch. They succeed without failure, right? When they get into money, then it destroys them.
Richness with arrogance.
Yeah. And success without values. And values come from character, and character comes from testing.
They were never
be afraid of a person who has succeeded, but does not tell you the story of how they were stretched, how they cried, how there was blood sometimes, and how there was tears all along their journey as they were heading to success. Be afraid of that person. So, because they are a danger, not just to themselves, but are a danger to their immediate loved ones and a danger to society in general. Another
habit.
Another habit is what I call in the book scrolling. You know, there's this thing called dumb scrolling. Now, take 5 of your friends on WhatsApp of your age, right? Check what they post on WhatsApp. They don't post what they sell because they don't have an entrepreneurial mindset that says, I wake up, what do I do every day? I sell. So I must post on all available social media, which is free, by the way. Absolutely free. All you need is data or Wi-Fi. But guess what they post? They take funny videos from TikTok and then they post it on their statuses and everywhere. There are people who have clothes that need to be sold in their wardrobes. Instead of selling those clothes that they no longer need, clean them up nicely, iron them nicely, and sell them over 26, 27 days in a month, they ask you, supposing the family maybe stay with them, they ask you for 200 rand when they have something they haven't used in the past 3 years in their wardrobe that they could sell. Not in a fancy Shopify kind of store. Of course, they can if they want to. Just on your WhatsApp. Just post, I have these jeans. This is the size. I'm selling them for 60 rand each or 100 rand each.
I went to his storeroom, right? And I was walking around there. He's like, you can take anything if you want. I'm like, and I'm like, this man is sitting on money. Right. Oh my God. I look around and those things, we threw them away.
Right. So selling is a habit.
I mean, don't portray me like a person who wastes.
Right? And young people, Machiavelli, need to learn that there is a reason why the act of going to get fish from the river is called fishing. It's not called catching. I mean, think about that for a while. It's not called catching. All you need is a habit of fishing. In the process of that habit of fishing,
you will catch.
Yeah. But it's not guaranteed that you will catch. So you're not going to sell every day, right? You're not going to make 3,000 rand every day, but you can make 100 rand here, 150 there, and so on and so forth. I mean, why are you not selling airtime on your status? Why? You have money in your bank. Your friends need airtime. Why don't you say, yeah, I've got airtime. Pay me 35 rand. I'll give you Vodacom 29. I mean, that's selling. Simple, straightforward. You don't have to go out in the sun and walk around, making people stop. Nah, I would like to sell you it. No, just post it every day on your status. All of a sudden, people who need airtime don't have to go to a particular store. They say, hey, can I have a Vodacom 55? How much is it now? It's 59 rand. Okay. And they send you money and that's it. So that's the second habit. I call it, dumb scrolling. Dumb scroll or use that dumb scroll, but in the process, post something. And then this one of starting something. Start something.
That's habit number 3.
Start something. Create an eyewear. Order from China 5 or 10 and give it a brand on the side. That's it. And start selling those sunglasses.
They call it drop shipping.
Right? I was telling someone recently that when you go to most chain stores, clothing chain stores.
Yes.
And I encourage you guys to do that the next time you're at the mall. Go to any clothing store, retail store. Look for a handkerchief.
Hey.
Where's my handkerchief? Let me just take it out.
Hey.
Right? Look for a handkerchief. Just this handkerchief. And tell me if you find it. Most shops, you will not get it. They tell you, no, we don't sell this. You can actually, on your WhatsApp, right? I'm not promoting WhatsApp, but on your WhatsApp, just sell handkerchiefs. Simple, straightforward.
And handkerchief is just my observation. It's just the off-cut of something else that was done. Looking at the size of it and the material of it.
You know?
Your old shirt that you are not wearing.
Yesterday we cut the curtain. We threw them away.
Right. That's handkerchief right there.
You know?
We threw the handkerchief away. Yeah.
Fourth habit, stick with people who think like you. When I say you think like you, I don't mean who agree with you, but who are heading the same direction. You want to learn how to sell, stick with people who sell. Right?
I really love that. Eh?
Yeah. Yes, stick with people who sell. Avoid people who say to you, for example, I am an author of 5 books now, right? Avoid people who say, hey, Mfethu, because they know me, right? We are friends. Hey, Mfethu, man, man, give me a copy, man. No, avoid those people. Be with the people who say, I want to buy your book. It's one thing for you to offer to say, hey, man, I'd like to give you a complimentary book. Because even in that act of giving a complimentary book, you are selling.
Yeah,
you are selling. I used the cost price of this book. Now it's on a podcast. All I paid for was its cost price from the printer. Did I put it right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's all. That's all I paid for this book. For the advertisement that is now going to be worldwide. But so be with like-minded people. People who don't discuss other people in a negative way, but people who actually discuss ideas, concepts, and business. I always say, but let's say you are married. You are a young person who is married.
Like me, so.
Like yourself, right?
Yes.
Stick with people who are married. You will learn a lot from them, especially those who are a bit older than you. You get what I'm saying? Stick with people who say, I had one married person saying recently, even if I divorce, it's fine. And I thought, no, I don't want to be close to this person. I don't want to divorce. No. And then the 5th habit, lastly, stick with people who are not afraid in the right audience, in the right context, who are not afraid to tell you the truth. You know, I need people who will say, Mfethu, I love you, I buy your books, but this cover doesn't work. Oh, it doesn't, I specialize in branding and stuff, and there's a problem with this cover. This cover doesn't represent what the book is about.
I love it. Yeah.
Right? Courageous feedback. I also call it difficult feedback. So in a nutshell, those are the 5 habits. Of course, there's 33, but just
we will go through them. We'll go through them. And I'm sorry to cut that. It's just that I want us, we've had different type of coaches right here. Financial coach, sports coach, literature coach. We've had all of them. But I was wondering, like, how important is the leadership coach in this conversation or amongst this lineup of coaches, you know? So that's why I wanted to have you here. But let's go back to the leadership thing, where we find ourselves right now as a country. Now we're coming back to the country. What do you think we should quit? What do you think we should quit? Maybe this is where we go wrong. We went wrong and all that. What do you think as a country we should quit?
We need to, as a country, in fact, I would even say, but as countries in Africa, because my observation goes even beyond our borders.
Yeah.
We have a tendency to call people by a name which is not theirs. We have a tendency as Africans to call each other chief.
Yeah.
Chief.
Leadership.
You go to a parastatal, a state-owned entity. Everyone calls someone mphathi, but akaphethe lo muntu. Umphathi by title. You know, Mpati in the South African context in isiZulu means the one in charge, boss.
Yeah.
Basically, you know, for purpose of those who don't speak the language, right? So we call people leadership. Hey, leadership.
Yeah.
No. We should stop that nonsense. Rather call him leader. Because when you say leadership to this person, what do you mean leadership? Is he or she the whole leadership? Complement? No. He or she is one person. Rather call him a leader, not leadership. Right? We have a concept that says leaders are people who are elected. And that is why towards the crazy season of elections, we start seeing people being killed, being gunned down, literally, especially in our context in South Africa. Currently, as I'm speaking, people are being gunned down, especially those who are somewhere at the top of the list of the upcoming elections,
local government elections that are happening in November.
Right?
Yes.
Because we think that is leadership. No, that's elections. Being elected has nothing to do with you being a leader, let alone a true leader. Nothing to do with it. In fact, the work you do is your preoccupation. It's not your occupation. It's what you are preoccupied about because it pays your monthly obligations. But we cannot definitively say that's your occupation. Your occupation is what burns in your heart. It is the fire in your belly. It is what you are prepared to die for, so to suffer for, and if need be, as Mandela said, to die, to even die for. So I think as a country, we need to stop calling people what they are not, and then we wait for a commission to call them what they are, which is a thief and a scoundrel and a charlatan and a person who belongs in jail. We wait for commissions. We wait and spend our own tax money to call people what they really are. No, let's call them now. Call people what they are. If the person is a leader, fine, call him a leader. If a person is a manager, call them a manager or a mayor or whatever. But please don't call them leadership. They are not leadership. All right? They are not leadership. And in calling them a leader or mayor or whatever, please study what a mayor is. Please study what a manager is. The one in charge, the overseer, the one who's looking after that particular unit, department, or section or branch or whatever. Let's get into the habit as a country of calling people what they are. I don't agree. Currently, Advocate Andrea Johnson is testifying at Madlanga Commission, right?
IDEC leader.
The ID, yes, the independent
directorate,
yes, of the
police,
right?
Force.
She's called Advocate. There's many others. I'm not just singling her out. There's many others. Why do we call somebody an advocate but is not a practicing advocate? Why? How can I be called an author when I've not written a book? Because effectively, that's what it means. All people do now, they do some part-time course at UNISA or other universities that offer part-time courses. They pass duly, and they graduate, and then they apply, and then they are accepted by the body, the professional body, in their own sector. And in this case, in this example, case in point, Bashe, I'm talking about advocates, and then they are accepted or admitted as advocates. Why does the Law Society of South Africa, the Bar of South Africa, why does it allow someone who is not a practicing advocate, who has never defended anyone in court? Let me just say it out. Never ever defended anyone. Why is this person called an advocate?
What's the danger side of that? Because I mean, China fixed that very well, right? Yeah, China's like, don't talk about the things that you don't,
yeah, not an expect on.
So yeah,
the danger is there's the English word running away now. The lying to yourself. As a nation, as a country, it's self-deception. That's the word I'm looking for, the phrase I'm looking for. It is self-deception. We start to accept things that are not so, and we normalize them.
Mediocre.
We become mediocre in the process, and we're not true to principle. Because all of a sudden, our minds as a nation now, as a country, our minds are warped. The national mind is warped because it accepts that which is not so. If I study and become a lawyer, right, and I qualify with an LLB, I would imagine that is the minimum requirement.
Yeah, 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah,
4 years, right?
4 years qualification.
If I apply to the bar of South Africa to be admitted as an advocate, I think I should not be admitted as an advocate. This is just an example with what's going on now. There are many other. There are people who are called chartered accountants, right? Yeah. Who have not seen the latest software on auditing or anything of that sort, right? But they are CEOs in some organization, and then they fall from grace. All of a sudden, they are now questioning, how is this person a chartered accountant? Yeah. Right? So I think as a nation, we need to move away from that. We need to start loving the truth. And the truth, even the written truth, when we say someone is XYZ, that person should be a practicing XYZ. That's the point I'm getting at.
Yeah. And it goes across board. We can't be having a minister of defense and then a deputy minister of defense who's more qualified than the minister.
Right.
That's why we are where we are. It makes sense.
And because politics is called power, it's not powerful, but it's called power, right? We as a nation, predominantly in the nations of Africa, all the different 54, I think 54,
55 now, 56. They keep splitting and...
There's the question of Eritrea. It's called Eritrea or whatever.
After South and North Sudan being split, I can't keep count now.
These 54, let's just call them 54 for the sake of progress, right? We have fallen into this trap, right, of believing the art of politicians making us believe the possible. Politics has nothing to do with power. Power is legal. Once the Chief Justice gets the elected president to sign on that dotted paper, that president, which is currently His Excellency Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa in our case in South Africa, once he signs on that dotted line, he has executive power that cannot be stopped by anybody. Unless you bring a motion of no confidence in parliament, of which you need 75%, 2/3 majority, right? Or am I getting it wrong? Or you impeach him, of which you need 51%.
51% impeachment.
That's the only two ways you can remove a president. Otherwise, if these two options are not there, the president currently, in terms of our constitution, he is literally the king.
And made that by the law.
Right? Yeah. So I'm saying that is power. And once as black people, black nations of African countries, once we start understanding that when we when we go out in the street, and we need to get to a point where we can influence policy and the laws, because that is where power is. Everything else that is away from power, true power, which is the law, right? Anything else is anarchy and chaos, and we don't want that. We don't want that. But unfortunately, sometimes the anarchy prevails, because I think we haven't learned that part, that actually our activism and our struggle should be more about, we need to change that law that says above the age of 75, you can still stay in parliament and sleep. That law we need to change.
Yeah, there are so many laws that people are actually talking about.
Right?
Yeah.
What are we doing right? Bashle ask about what we are doing wrong.
Yeah.
You talked about titles, using titles wrong. As a country, as a nation, as South Africa, as Africa, and as a world. But I'm more interested in South Africa.
Yeah, we can go in South Africa because he did mention in the world like
constitutionalism. Yeah.
So I need you to just Google something for me, just for us to have fact. Ne?
Okay.
How much we spent on Zondo? Was it 20 million or 200 million?
1 billion.
Or was it 2 billion? Just check for me that, how much we spent on Zondo.
Zondo Commission.
So what we're doing right, we are spending money, right? We're spending money on strengthening the rule of law. Right now, the entire justice system, criminals, so let me be specific, the entire criminal justice system in South Africa is under intense scrutiny. We're asking questions we've never asked before, right? A number of senior police leaders, right at the top, are actually, in court because they over time they'd become friends with criminals, alleged criminals.
Can I ask you, who's behind that tightening of the criminal justice system?
A courageous leader, again, who was not afraid to suffer, even if it's to the point of death, by his own admission, by the way. The current Lieutenant General, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, who actually last year, on the 6th of July, exactly 12 months ago, right, stood in front of South Africa and the world and said, there is something going on in our criminal justice system and it needs to be looked at. Those are the kinds of leaders we need to shine the light in the darkness, and then we get to work in cleaning up and repelling and removing that darkness.
And that takes us back to the leaders that they have their target, the back on their target.
Right.
We all know Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So imagine if we had many Nhlanhla Mkhwanazis, right, in all 9 provinces. Can I add? In all 54 countries of Africa. Can I add? In all continents, in all 4 continents, or are they 5 now? In all 4 continents and globally. Imagine if we had a cohort of Nhlanhla Mkhwanazis. I'm sorry, I'm just mentioning him by name. Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. Right? Imagine if we had that, Machiavelli. So I'm saying I don't know if you're finding it, but
I'm not winning here, but
let's just estimate and say the millions.
Yes.
Right? The millions of rands we spent in Zondo, the millions of rands we've spent in the Nkabinde inquiry, which has just exonerated the gentleman who was suspected, wrongly so, that he was doing something wrong. And President Ramaphosa has just written a letter reinstating it at work. The current prosecutor, head of prosecutions in North Gauteng, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm gonna be frank with you. When it comes to this political news affairs, I'm not really following.
I get you. So he's just the Nkabinde inquiry has just concluded about a week or 2 ago, and they declared him that he hasn't done anything wrong, and therefore the president has now written to him to say, "Come back to work." All right. Yesterday, literally yesterday, 24 hours ago, the advocate Andrea Johnson, the head of IDEC, acknowledged.
It was so embarrassing.
It was so embarrassing, Pedro.
It was so
acknowledged in front of the entire world that she did not do her job, which she's supposed to do, before issuing an instruction for people to be investigated. Miss Mukweli, let's mention her by name. Miss Mukweli, who was working for for BMW as one of the engineers there. Fully qualified, in fact, overqualified. Miss Johnson, Advocate Johnson, right? She put in her affidavit, submitted to the ad hoc committee in Parliament. And to the now Madlanga Commission. In one of the paragraphs, she says this was literally so bad that General Khumalo literally hired a receptionist from BMW who has no qualification and does not have any space within crime intelligence. We're talking about a person who has an engineering diploma or degree. Over and above that, has a qualification in mechatronics, not mechatronics, in mechatronics, mechanical electronics, right? Of which the advert, one of the commissioners, Commissioner Kuman, said, no, you need to tell us which qualification doesn't she have? So I'm saying, therefore, we need as South Africa to, what we're doing right, we're spending money at the right place, right? Of course, it's after the fact. It would be better if we could avoid it. But be that as it may, we are where we are now. We are spending money on Madlanga. We've spent money on Kabinde. We've spent money on Zondo. There's probably going to be more commission, or there's a current commission on TRC, the Khambembe.
Yes.
Khambembe Commission.
The Galata, the Craddock for descendants.
So why those TRC findings were not instituted. As a commission on that as well. It all speaks to leaders in different sectors of government, right? At different levels of responsibility and authority, who are not willing to suffer for the cause or even die for the cause. But we're doing it right. We're saying as South Africa to the world, we believe in laws. We don't believe in anarchy. We don't believe in corruption. And we certainly don't believe in the capture of the state, where, similar to what happened at IDEC, people can wake up one day, and get into your bank account without permission, without due process and due cause, and actually disrupt your life. Miss Mukwele's life, and together with others who have been, who are currently in court, their lives have been disrupted. And based on what's coming out Machiavelli from the Madlanga Commission, especially yesterday and today, I can tell you now that court case is out. That court case is already out.
Yeah.
Sure.
So now, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
What's different? We are deep into politics, but it's all about leadership anyway. What's different about Zondo Commission and Madlanga Commission? The president, the recommendations like binding of the Madlanga Commission, unlike those ones of the Zondo Commission. Because I believe the Zondo Commissions, that's why the Zondo Commission, no one got arrested, nothing like materialized like the rest of the other commissions. You will still remember that Life Esidimeni. There was a commission about that, but no arrests were held. So what's different? Just
the distinguishing factor in this case is not the commission themselves. Some people are saying Zondo played a soft hand. Madlanga is much more of a hanging judge. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's the shift in the power dynamics. What happened in the last 2024 elections to the ANC?
It dropped to 40 something.
It lost the majority.
A majority.
Literally.
Yes.
And that's the deciding factor. So Zondo happened at a time when the ANC was still hanging on with a thread to power in terms of numbers. Now the ANC doesn't have numbers. That's why the Madlanga Commission findings are being implemented, because the ANC's voice is no longer strong and their votes, right, from Parliament coming down are no longer strong. They're no longer the majority. I mean, the judgment by Justice Mandi Samaya.
Yeah.
That judgment basically said, ANC, not this time. Not this time.
A speaker, national speaker, do your job.
You're not going to vote in parliament using your majority and vote for something that is wrong. That time is over. This is what the judgment is. If I were to summarize it in one sentence, that time is over. Speaker of Parliament, institute the impeachment process.
Do your job.
Do your job. Otherwise, we're going to deal with you. Do your job.
Consequence management.
So when the dynamics of power and authority change, Bashle, it's often, Machiavelli, the opportunity as a leader, a single leader, it's often an opportunity for you to act. So you have to read what's going on, right? Be ready. If the power dynamics are not ready, you must be prepared that you're going to suffer the consequences. If the ANC had power, I can tell you now, Justice Mandi Samaya, the current Chief Justice, I should be...
Just like Mkhwebane.
I'm telling you.
The same thing that happened to Public Protector
right.
would have happened to... Yeah.
The dynamics would be different. But the dynamics are different because of what I've just said. So that's the main difference. Everyone who is a leader in these government institutions, the variety and departments and
state-owned,
everyone is looking with eyes that say, I can get in there. So when they say prosecute, I'm going to prosecute. Arrest so and so, yes, I'm going to arrest so and so. Yeah. That's the mindset that is there at the moment. Of course, in the majority and in the main, right, it's opportunistic. Right? It is opportunistic. But from us as public, I want to see the people who have been found out by Madlanga, and the recommendations made by Madlanga on the reports that have been given. I think there's 2 reports that have been given to the president so far. I want to see an alleged person like Julius Mkhwanazi being in court, in the dock, and answering for his crimes, alleged crimes.
When it comes to such conversation, they really take me by defeat. Conversations around political leadership and football, I'm not really big into that.
I get you.
However, I understand that the people that are watching, there are brains that want to hear this conversation. But my curious part on this part of conversation is the followers of all these things, the spectators. What role should we, or where should we, how should we be positioning ourselves at this day and time when these things are happening? Because as I thought this conversation might jump on this on this part of it. We normally look at the leaders and sort of question them, want to hold them accountable, but we never go on the follower side. What, as a follower or as a person that's actually being affected by all these things that are happening, how should I be positioned myself? What should I do? At this moment in time?
So first and foremost, I don't believe in followers. So the type of leadership I teach, Machiavelli, it does not feature followers. Because the original design by the creator was not that there should be a leader and that there should be followers. And true leaders, by distinction, Bashle, are not looking for followers. They are committed to the cause. The followers, as we call them, right, are attracted by the passion and the commitment of the leader to the cause. So leadership is not even about the person himself or herself. It is about purpose. Why that person was created, why that person was brought to planet Earth, right? So I want to give that context before I go into your question.
Yeah.
Followers, what we call followers, right? Therefore, should firstly see themselves as leaders in their own right. And every time I say that statement, usually people have a cognitive dissonance where what they know is fighting with the new stuff I'm saying.
Yeah.
How can we all be leaders? Who's going to follow? It is because of the lie that has been taught over the millennia, right? Over the eons rather of time, that actually there are leaders and then there are followers. They aren't. They are just leaders. And how so? Because leadership is not about leading people. I'm going to pause for effect. Leadership has nothing to do with leading people. Absolutely nothing. It is people who choose to follow a leader on their cause. Leadership is about the cause, not finding followers to follow.
Yeah.
I have to pause on this one. I have to go slowly on this one.
I hear you, because it changed the whole understanding of leadership on my side as well.
Sure. Yeah. And therefore, a leader who is looking for followers doesn't want to suffer and doesn't want to die. And who suffers? The followers. So the cause, the purpose for which we are born, it is designed to consume you so much that by the time you die, you've emptied yourself to the service of humanity.
The cause.
The cause is for the benefit of the current generation, but much more the benefit of the next generation. That's why we need more leaders in politics and less politicians in leadership.
Yeah.
Let me say that again. We often mistake politics for leadership. Politics is not leadership. Politics is a leadership space, right? And unfortunately, in that space, there are politicians and not leaders. The word politics means the rulership of a city. You know?
When you break it down,
metropolis. The word politi means the management of a city. You know, in the olden days, you would get a city, like Bloemfontein would be called a city instead of a province.
Yeah.
And it would have a wall protecting it from enemies, would-be enemies, right? So this is where the word comes from, loosely translated on my part, right? So hence I say we need more leaders in the political space, which is a leadership space. It doesn't belong to politics, politicians. It belongs to leaders, true leaders. And then we need less politicians in that space of leadership. So followers need to realize that when they follow a person, they are wrong. But when they follow the cause of that person, they are right. And it goes into even the detail of who do you vote for. Literally. Now, in the Greek intellectual space, the Greek philosophers, Socrates was killed, right, by the then government because he believed that democracy doesn't work. Now, I'm not against democracy. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm saying he believed in a leader like the former president Thabo Mbeki, who is called a philosopher king. A king who is a philosopher, meaning a king who has good thoughts about the people, not a dictator. Sometimes called, that philosopher king concept, sometimes it's called a benevolent dictator, meaning a person who is forthright, but for the good reason, and does not kill his people, does not destroy his people. Hence the word benevolent dictator. Now, he then introduced the concept of universities. Why Machiavelli? Because he wanted to create other Socrates who can then become the middle class, who will then hold political positions, and therefore there'll be progress and peace in government or in rulership. And that is where the concept, the aristocracy, comes from. Because Aristotle was a student of Socrates, and he continued the teachings of Socrates, right? The house was called Academia, and students of rich people at the time would come and study from the master in his house, and hence the word academic. That's where it comes from, because that's what the house was called, the name of the house. So even the word academic has nothing to do with education, but it comes from history.
Yeah.
Somebody calls themselves, I'm a pedagogue. And you look at this, do you know what a pedagogue is?
Yeah.
So pedagogy, which is the science of education, peda means feet. Pedagogy means a servant boy or a slave boy who accompanies the child of a rich person to the master's house to learn.
Yeah.
The pedagogue would remain outside the gate and wait until the lesson is done. Then they would accompany back the child of the master back home. That's a pedagogue. The boy or girl, the boy, it was predominantly boys. The peda means feet, walking. Who would walk the child to school and then bring them back. Now, a teacher is called a pedagogue as well, but I wonder if they know what pedagogy means in the true sense of the word. Of course, now it is understood to mean a person who studied the science of education and the philosophy of education, and also the practice of teaching. Of course. All right. I'm not saying that's not the case, but I'm saying the original words have a lot to teach us about things. So even the followers then, coming back to your question, followers need to go back and really teach themselves about what do we mean by democracy? And once I understand, also, this is what democracy means. Okay, then I need to be careful who I vote for. And much more important, Machiavelli, I need to come out and vote. Don't leave voting for a few. And then you complain about the people who are now voted by the few, who are now doing things that are wrong. But you didn't come out and vote. You didn't. You lost the right to complain when you didn't vote. Go and vote. Right?
What if someone says the system is rigged already, whether I vote or not vote? Or someone would say, yes, even by voting, that's a vote on its own.
I like that question. You cannot win the lottery if you don't play it. You've got to get involved. You want to be wet? Get into the water. Right? So I'm saying, therefore, you don't know by your vote. You don't know who's going to win just by your vote. You might be that one last vote that the right person wins the day. And therefore, things begin to change. Of course, not instantly, but over time.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, we still call ANC the ruling party because the president is coming from the ANC, but they have 40%. Is this set up now, the currently that we have in Parliament, constitutional?
An interesting question. Actually, even at the time when the ANC had the majority, right, and called themselves the leader of society, I always called them the ruled party. The ruled party. Because the ANC is ruled elsewhere.
The
ANC is not ruled at Luthuli House.
Luthuli House.
By the way, it's not Luthuli House, it's Luthuli House.
Yeah,
most people, we listen on TV, people say Luthuli House. No, it's not Luthuli House. It's Luthuli House. So it's actually the same name of a person. Right? So I called it a ruled party because you can see that the ANC is ruled somewhere and